Well, hello, everyone. This is Jeannie White from Social Connections on Passionate World Radio. And you know that we're doing a series here, and it's a very important series for these caregivers that are being caregivers for their loved ones that have a diagnosis of Alzheimer's. We know that it's not an easy road for these men and women that are going through it. And today I have Christina Turner on, and she's been on the show previously. Now, Christina is here now. She wants to talk about giving some information for new caregivers, what their expectations are and the knowledge. Welcome, Christina.
Thank you, Jeannie, and thank you for having me again. I appreciate it. I don't pretend to be an expert in this, but I have had a lot of experience, and some of the experience I have learned through some hardships. So I'd like to pass on a few pieces of things that I have learned. I know that a lot of times when a family member becomes ill or when it becomes noticeable that there is a problem with their memory, usually that's the first significant sign, people don't always understand that there are more symptoms than just some short-term memory loss. And I think sometimes family members don't really have a good picture of what to expect, not only from or for the patient, but of themselves. And I also find that they don't have a good understanding of what to expect from other family members. The problem that I see frequently is that somebody will agree to take either mom or dad or whoever in the family it is to their home to care for them without really making any conclusion about the rest of the family being included. And their expectations are, well, if I'm taking, let's say, mom home, then my sisters and brothers will come in and help, and they'll relieve me, and they'll help financially or whatever whatever they think they need. But if you don't speak about that to begin with, those are your expectations, you as the caregiver. And I just see it over and over and over again. We take that loved one into our home, and we burn out pretty quickly for a lot of different reasons. It's really hard work. You're isolated. You have some financial constraints, and your life changes completely in ways that most people don't expect. And then when you need help and the rest of the family doesn't gather around, it's quite a disappointment. And then it turns into anger. And that resentment is really not healthy for the caregiver. To be a caregiver of somebody that has some kind of a dementia or Alzheimer's, it is a job that you have to give 110%. And I know that a lot of times doctors will diagnose and they'll say, really, you should think about placement. And I know that people in this area of it as well are reluctant to look at the bigger picture. And they say, oh, I can manage. I want to take care of mom. Well, everybody wants to do what's best for that patient or for that person, but it doesn't mean that you're always necessarily skilled for it. Everybody doesn't have the ability to be a 24/7 caregiver, and it's not anyone's fault. Some people are more accepting of that role for lots of different reasons. But I think that people don't always understand the commitment that they have agreed to. And I think it comes back to bite a lot of them. And a lot of times they might not even understand the way that dementias will work, and they don't know all of the symptoms. And even if you read them the symptoms or verbally tell people the symptoms, until you start to see it in your own home with that person, even then it's pretty shocking, even if they've already been educated on what to expect. So I think that new caregivers lots of times just don't have the kind of information that they need. I don't really know that that's a doctor's fault. I think sometimes when they're diagnosed, the doctor makes a recommendation that you should look for placement. And I think that's probably even though it might sound cold, I think there's a reason for it. And I think that the reason is that it's been proven it's a lot of work. It's demanding, and it's a completely thankless job, and you lose out on your life as well as them losing out on theirs, and it can eat up an enormous amount of time. Usually if somebody has a cancer or something, they've got a limited amount of time if they've exhausted all treatments. But with most dementias, it can go on and on and on, not just for months, but for years. And I just don't think that people are really I don't think that they have the idea of how much involvement it takes, and it can be pretty detrimental to the rest of their family as well. And I want to stress again that I know the importance of feeling that you're getting some kind of help, and when you don't get it from family, most people become quite resentful. And lots of siblings, I don't know that they necessarily have given up on their mom or whoever it is, but they feel that if you made the initial investment and said you'll take them, they just gave you that job. They let you have that. But I think that people need to understand you need to have those conversations, adult conversations, with the rest of your family members before you make that move and bring mom or dad or whoever it is into the house. If it's a spouse, there's a difference. You may or may not have some of your children available to come in and help you. They may not be close. They may not be willing. A spouse is a kind of a different situation than it is with a mom or a dad. And I don't think that people feel quite as resentful about their children not stepping up to the plate, so to speak, as they do if it's a parent and you're bringing, your own siblings aren't coming in to help like you think that they should. Anyway, I have found that many people just don't make that. They make an assumption and they don't make that attempt to have that conversation prior to moving somebody in, and then it's too late. They've already got all the problems and nobody to help them with it. And help isn't always available. I mean, some people are eligible for different kind of services through VA or through the area on aging, but everybody is not eligible for any kind of financial assistance or for a home health aide to come in and spot you for a while. And even later on in hospice, all hospices don't have volunteers that can come in and stay for a long period of time. They might only be able to come in and stay for 2 or 3 hours. And most of the volunteers, at least in some rural areas, are not, they're not trained. They're just like a person that would come in and sit with somebody and hold their hand. And so if your loved one needed something while you were gone, that's not going to be helpful to you. If they have to change a diaper or reposition them and those kind of things, lots of times volunteers are not trained for that. So there's a lot involved in agreeing to taking a person home to your home or you moving into their home, and I just don't think that people are fully aware. And I've lived through some of those problems, and it can be pretty devastating. And I think that you could spend a lot of time afterwards, trying to work out that resentment and stuff that you have against the other family, and then you got family members that you don't talk with, and I don't know a mom or a dad alive that wants that for their children to be left with forever. So that's one aspect, and I think it's a big one. And I think another one is that people don't always understand the symptoms of their loved ones. I have a family member that tried to ignore a lot of what was happening with the mother, and just kind of refused to acknowledge that anything was going on and that she needed help. They acknowledged that mom had some problems with memory and that she repeatedly asked the same questions, maybe 7 or 8 times in an hour, but they did not understand that along with the short-term memory, that, peripheral vision is affected in dementia. And so there are other reasons other than the fact that they are forgetful why they shouldn't drive, for one thing. And cognitively, their reflexes are slowed and distorted. And this family just could not grasp that there were other issues to be considered. And so it ended up kind of in a big mess. But when the mom finally was placed, the only thing that the daughter could say was, and she repeatedly said, "My mom is just so mad at me, and she's the maddest woman in the whole world." And everything was about the reflection on her, and it was hard for her to understand that she should have put her focus back on her mom. Her mom wasn't capable of doing anything except being angry. She was upset. She didn't understand why she was not allowed to drive anymore. She didn't understand why she couldn't live alone. In their mind, they still rationalize that everything is okay, or at least most patients do. And certainly, in this case, she was not okay to drive, and she really wasn't okay to live alone. She stopped bathing, and she ate very poorly. She didn't take her medicines. And one evening, she actually was driving around my neighborhood about a block away. She couldn't find my house, and she was knocking on strangers' doors looking for my husband, her brother. And, the police ended up being called because this family was tired of her. It was 8, 9 o'clock at night. They were concerned about her, but they also were tired of her knocking on their door repeatedly because she'd drive around the block or a couple of blocks and go back to that same house. So there's lots of aspects about people with dementia that you might not think about or might not realize. And I think that's another big problem for people that say we'll care for someone because they really don't know what to expect. And I think a lot of times it goes back to the doctor. They expect that doctor will, give them some information. The doctor doesn't give you all that. They don't have time to explain all the different things that could possibly go wrong or that a patient could possibly experience. Another thing that many of them experience is some paranoia or a suspicion. And so you have to be careful because sometimes, they may have some sundown where in the later afternoon and evening when they're very fatigued, they will all of a sudden become much more confused. They can become agitated. My husband did not. There was at one point he thought that he wasn't being fed, or that I think actually he thought that he told one of my daughters that the food wasn't safe here to eat, that he thought that they might have had some poison in it. Now, where he got that from, I don't know, but that's just an example of what can happen with patients, that maybe the next morning he was clear as a bell for a few hours and would have never said anything or even thought anything like that. But you just don't always know. So there's just so many different aspects of caregiving that people are unaware of, and they don't know where to turn to. I know there's a lot of local hospitals and mental health centers and health departments that put on like meetings for, a group meeting for Alzheimer's or dementia patients that you can go and either learn about or be a support system. But I really think that people that are willing to be a caregiver should invest more of themselves in learning as much as they can, because it's only going to benefit the patient. And if the patient has got some benefits, your loved one, then that caregiver is better too. And it's much easier to care for someone when you have more knowledge. And we seem to be lacking in that. And so I'm really pleased, Jeannie, that you are doing this type of program and covering probably a lot of different aspects so that the people that are listening can hopefully, take a bit and piece from me or everybody else and maybe give some information that we haven't thought about to someone else. because there's an awful lot of things involved.
Oh, I agree, Christina. I mean, it was excellent what you've done, what you were talking about, because this is the beginning stages, how important it is to understand what this journey is going to be like down the road, and try to get as much information as possible, not necessarily from the doctor, but you can call up the elder services in your area, and maybe they can direct. Maybe that's one of the things we can really address, is that elder services, they do have certain information, probably
exactly.
even bring out a case manager may be able to come out to your house and talk to you,
Yes,
but
I can just agree with you about 110% on that. Whatever or wherever they can get information, please seek it out. It's not going to come walking to your door, I promise you. I'm sorry that it doesn't. And I'm sorry for family that doesn't, get involved. But, try to have all those conversations up front to begin with and learn as much as you can, because as the person that you love declines, you will be amazed at the rapidity of the change that happens sometimes, and you won't even understand how you can keep up with it.
Right.
So.
You can't. It's just mystifying for me. I'm sure they're down the road. They're saying right now, how the doctors are. Well, there's nothing we can do.
Right.
But there may be a trial going on, or a new drug coming out to test. Who knows? But maybe some of this information, like in a booklet or something, could be in their office, or places to call. I really don't know. I don't know what's going on in their offices, but I think people have to be due diligent, and they have to do the work. To find it.
Yes, they do. They do. And we have to encourage people that there is help out there, there is information out there, and just give some better ideas of where to find it.
Right. I think I don't know, I can't speak for everyone, but I think when you hear that first word, Alzheimer's, I mean, you probably, your brain just you like zoom out, for a second. And you may not have someone with you that could ask the questions for you, too.
Correct.
Sometimes you need another pair of ears to hear things. So it's a process, and maybe like T.P. Snow, she's excellent to go to. She has a wealth of information on her site. But
right. There are places. We just have to encourage people to
find
where to find it and to search it out. Because a lot of people just don't even realize, a lot of people really don't know what they're getting into, and like I say, a lot of family members will take somebody home because they say, well, she can't remember things. There is so many more aspects of it than that, and before it's a learning process, because every patient is different. They're not all going to display the same symptoms or problems, but there are such a variety of things that you should be aware of, that you can watch for. And when it happens, if it does, you can acknowledge it and you understand, and you'll figure out how to work through it.
Oh, I agree. I think, we're trying to, put it out there. And I know there's a lot of other stations that are doing it. There are, obviously we're not the only station that's, providing this information. But maybe they're just not listening at the right time. I really don't know. Or they're just too overwhelmed at that point. When you become overwhelmed, you can't even think straight where you should go, or what you should do. And maybe it's not that bad. In the beginning, a lot of people must think this. Well, no, it's not that bad. It'll go away, but it doesn't go away.
No, it gets worse as time goes on. It's it's the long goodbye, and it can be a very long one, and it comes with many levels of deterioration.
I know. Well, I know myself personally because my dad had it, and then I had my two best friends, female friends, Phyllis and my friend Terry. In fact, coming up in January, one will be dead 3 years, and the other one will be dead a year. But we saw the changes. But when you're talking about your friends, you can see these things, and if you try to tell their loved ones, they don't pay attention to you.
Right.
They say,
"Well, I'm sorry for your loss too." It's hard.
It is.
It's
It's
painful.
sad, But when you when you try to say something, people go, "Oh no, it's not that bad," but it is.
Well, my own family, my sister-in-law driving around town looking for her brother who had already passed. He passed in June, and she couldn't remember that, and she's looking, and she didn't even know where our house was.
Right.
So, she had no business being behind the wheel of a car, and yet her children did not understand that was a real issue till, it became an issue, and then it was too late. She ended up having to be placed. But
I wish there was something. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to say that I think that the one thing that people, if you're going to be willing to take on a loved one, make sure that you really want to do that, because it's a horrendous job. And if you're doing it out of duty, I'm afraid you're going to not succeed for their sake. You have to remember that even though it's mom and you love her, it's okay if you can't manage it. It's okay if you can't take care of her. It's okay to look for placement. And it's also okay to place somebody and go visit them. Everybody can't be a caregiver. And I'd much rather see somebody make the placement than to have a really bad situation in the home where the patient isn't getting the kind of care that they deserve, because the caregiver just can't give it.
Can't do it. It's a 24-hour number. It really is.
Yeah.
Like I talked before about this, Christine. I'm not sure if I had talked to you about it, but my friend Phyllis, who had it, it got so bad, that they don't sleep a lot. They just don't.
Right.
They could go to sleep for an hour and then they're up. That's it.
Yep.
And her husband was rushed to the hospital because he was getting a bloody nose and it wouldn't stop. He was so stressed out, his blood pressure was skyrocketing, I guess, and he was in the hospital for a few days, more than a few days. And a recommendation, I said, too bad you couldn't get someone to come and sit. So they did. They got a nurse, a retired nurse, that came in from 10 to 6, so that he could have at least 3 or 4 hours straight sleep. So people don't realize the nighttime is brutal. The nighttime is brutal.
And when it's day after day after day, you might catch a day, one day, middle of the week, that you get a few hours of sleep. That doesn't equate to anything.
Right,
really.
and I feel that I don't know the ratio of it, but a lot of caregivers are so exhausted and everything. Some of them pass on before their loved ones, the ones that have the Alzheimer's.
Yeah. And some of them, soon after. It's a brutal job.
It's a time-consuming, and I don't want to make it feel like it's nothing that you should do. You just need to know that it's not an everyday situation, because every day is so different for everyone.
Exactly. Yeah. No, for those that feel that they can take the job on, I've done it 3 times now, and I don't regret that I did it. I struggled for different reasons at different times, but I know that I personally made my loved one's life better than what it would have been had they not had me. But I'm not an exception to the rule, but I'm slightly different than some people. I mean, you can go to school to be anything. You can go to school to be a teacher, but it doesn't mean if you don't like children, you shouldn't do that job. Right. And caregiving is the same way. If you just can't do the hands-on, it's okay. It's all right. It isn't for everybody.
But everyone can, it's just a thing it's a guilt thing also for them, Christina.
Right.
That my mother or dad, they'll say, they took care of me. They brought me up. And yes, they did. And that was wonderful. But it's almost like
you're not raising a child.
No, they're not.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, what happens, they revert back to be in childhood, with the diapers and can't eat. You have to feed them. It's
like a baby in reverse. They're growing younger instead of growing up.
I feel also very terribly sad for the person that has the Alzheimer's.
You bet.
because inside of them, no one really knows, unless you can talk to them in the very beginning, what is going on with them. They must feel, bewildered and what has happened, what is going on, and they're just, obviously they're confused, that's for sure. But what happened to their lives? Because what happens, Alzheimer's erases that memory like it never existed.
It's a real trauma for most patients.
Yes.
And
yes.
It's pretty heartbreaking. It's devastating to watch a person that you know and love lose their intellect and ability just to function. And you can see it on their face.
Yes,
you
daily
can
skills,
see it on their
feeding,
face.
dressing, brushing your teeth, things that you just take for granted.
For granted,
and,
right.
And now this is all it's actually taken away from them. So I can't imagine if they are thinking what is going on inside of them, because they're scared also. They're petrified.
I think they're also scared of what the future is going to hold and how much worse it's going to get. At least it was like that with my husband. And he did verbalize those kind of things lots.
Yeah.
So it's a torment for the patient as well. And that's why I say, you really need to be, if you're going to be the caregiver, the focus needs to be mostly on them and what you can provide to keep them in a safe and stable and happy environment. It takes a lot of effort. And if you don't really love that person, probably should think twice about doing it.
Because, in the course of a day, they can ask you that one question 1 million times.
Yeah.
And I don't think people understand that they just don't remember. Like as soon as it came out,
it's very frustrating after.
Yeah, it's gone for them. They have no idea. And I think it's a frustration for the caregiver. Why can't he understand? Why can't she understand? Well,
the brain doesn't work anymore.
No, the brain is failing, isn't it?
It sure is. Just deteriorating right before your eyes.
Right, yeah.
It's like an elevator that drops down a couple of floors, and then it might level off for a little while, and then it'll, eventually
I'm sure they're all working diligently on it now to find a cure for it. And it's going to take a long time and a lot of trials,
Yeah, for sure.
And
we don't have things that can really treat very well yet, but...
Yeah, no. It's not to say it won't, but, I was watching GBS the other day, and they had Deepak Chopra on and a physician, and what they were talking about was some of the stuff in the very beginning when you're growing up or you're in an adult, they recommend truly to try to exercise, and they're all not pushing, but that Mediterranean diet is wonderful, all right? And get plenty of sleep, and try to be stressless. It's like, you have to change your lifestyle a little bit, And, they're not saying it's going to take it away, but maybe it will slow the pace down for them a little bit in the very beginning, So diet is important. I think it's Colleen that she's using the Mediterranean diet on her mom.
I agree with you, and the activity, the exercise is just as important for all health, for
everyone, really,
and for the caregivers as well. They need to figure out how they can make time. It's easy to say we don't have time for this because I know I lived it, and there isn't time. But you have to somehow figure out whatever you can do to find a few minutes of stress-free time or activity that you can walk or something, because you'll just crash and burn, and if it happens while your loved one is still alive, then who's going to take care of them?
Right, yeah, who's going to take care of them if you get sick? That's
right.
the deal. I'm not, obviously we want to put doom and gloom, but you have to think about what the process is and what this journey is.
Right. I'm certainly not, I don't mean to be doom and gloom either, but I think that people don't understand what they're signing up for.
What they're signing up for, yes. Right, I agree.
That's what I would like people to have a better awareness of.
Education. Comes down to education, Christina. Maybe we should do, maybe after the first year, I don't know how it would work though, but I don't know if they would have the time, like do a webinar or something where you can, at least have some people write in. I ask them to write their questions in, but they probably don't even have the time to write a question in.
Yeah, that's true. Well, I think that the more that you do this, the more that you'll find people will be drawn, or at least I'm hopeful that's what happens.
I hope so too, and I know that I would obviously come back because we have another subject to talk about in the Alzheimer. Yes, and so you let me know when you want to come back on, and we'll do it. So the more times, like Betsy, she comes on every Wednesday and talks about things. And you can come on anytime you want. Even after you do this next subject. Even if it's for 15 minutes, and it's 15 minutes that somebody can hear you, Christina, and you may, you know what I always feel, it's as long as we can get one person, that's all I care about, really. As long as you get one.
Yeah. If you can help one person,
right.
That's pretty amazing.
So if you have any ideas, or I'm sure there's tons of books out there. I've seen them on Amazon. But maybe if we made it just a simple concept, like a little ebook or something like a little.
That's a nice idea. I'll try to do a little brainstorming myself and
do some brainstorming. And if you want to call me up and we can brainstorm on Zoom or something like that, very simple concept. Not going into any detail. Just say if this happens, make note of it so that when you go to the doctors, you can ask them that, or something like that. Do you know?
Yeah. Exactly.
I think it would be a good idea for something in a simple complex where they don't have to read a lot of stuff, but at least you can put in quickly where they could go to find this stuff. I think it's a good idea.
Like a Cliff Notes book, handbook,
Yeah,
for sure.
Exactly.
Okay. Jeannie, thank you so much for letting me come on today, and I'll be back in touch with you probably not until after the holiday because I've got things happening, but I will be back in touch with you, and I'll be honored to come back on again. Thank you.
Oh, definitely. I would love to have you back on, Christina. Thank you so much for taking the time. I'm sorry about yesterday. Got kind of crazy, with the physical therapy.
Worked out fine. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So, all right. So Bessie is going to come back on, and we'll let you know after the first of the year when she's coming. I'll shoot off a post or something to let everyone know. And, again, I want to thank everyone for coming and listening to this show, Social Connections with Jeannie White and Christina Turner, and her information on education and expectations, which is very important. So if you have any questions or anything, you can send it to me, jwhite7033@comcast.net if you have time. And if I do get them, I will relay them to Christina. Again, Christina, thank you so much for being on the show. I truly appreciate it. And I want to thank everyone for listening. Have a great day, everyone. I'll talk to you later. Bye now.